This is Insight. Phone lines are open. Dial 384-2191.
Friday in the month of March, and that means that Mayor Bob McManus avails himself to my abuse. Here on today's Insight program, you can call us 384-2191, 384-2192. I was just sitting here thinking I could remember times when I didn't know what to talk about.
Me too.
And my, how that's changed.
Right.
I'm going to start, first of all, with the most recent development. It was unusual to me that the city council has a meeting in the morning on a weekday. I don't know why it was then, but maybe you can fill me in and exactly what happened.
Well, I think you saw, on Tuesday night we had a meeting and a lot was discussed. That was a special meeting. And then there were things discussed that had to go back and forth with other folks. And then there had to be a meeting to hear what the final conclusion was and then vote on it. And so that's basically what came out of Tuesday's meeting. There was lots of discussion on the subject, and then the attorneys go to work with all parties involved and presented late in the afternoon. Not exactly sure of the actual time frame. I believe it was late in the afternoon on Wednesday, or maybe Wednesday evening. We got to look at what potential resolution could be, and then went to the council meeting very early Thursday morning. Things were moving very quickly.
Talking with Mayor Bob McManus, specifically, if you're not following here, the resignation, or what turned out to be, of Police Chief Rick Gramza after a long investigation here. And as you know, citizens the natives are restless as to what's happening here. And the vote was to do what with him? Request a resignation?
A resignation and a settlement. So there could be, this way we don't have to go through with the trial. There was an extensive investigation done. There were two done. One was of a criminal matter, and we're not involved in that. And the other is one of an employment matter. And so everything was taking place the way it should. And what most people don't understand, and even being in it, it's hard to fathom, but police officers and firefighters fall into a unique scenario in that they're handled under Wisconsin's statute 6213.5. So when somebody is going to be released, then there's a process when it's for cause. And so that's why many people were just saying, well, with what why can't you just, fire or separate employment or whatever? And because there's a very specific process that we have to follow, and it is state mandated, so you have to follow that process, and which we did. And I mean but it's been a long time. It's been since August 6th. And so, a lot of people have a lot of feelings over this for a number of different reasons. And one part here is now we can start going forward and putting this chapter behind us. I would like to commend the city employees that came out and, they voiced their concerns, and many of them contributed to the investigation, and I don't want them at all to fear any sort of retaliation or anything like that. I believe they can rest easy on that. It's hard for people to come forward. This has been hard on everybody. It's been hard on certainly on the folks at the police department. It's been hard on the victim. It's been hard on staff. It's been hard on our internal staff. In preparation for this, a lot of work has gone on to this. So now we're able on this to, now that the resignation we'll have to start preparing for the future.
Well, there's a lot of things to unpack here, though, that people don't understand. You alluded to one of them, which is the process that has taken so long by which this goes by state statutes. Mm-hmm. Now, the way it was told to me on this program in the past, it's because of our form of government in this city, whereby we have, what's the term, not an active mayor, but a...
we have a police and fire commission.
We have a city administrator, a
Right.
police and fire commission, and a mayor that's figurehead, so to speak, because the administrator takes care of the business. Because we set up our city government that way, of only a handful in the state, then we have to fall under this 6213.5 statute.
Well, that's a lot of that is accurate, but every city has a police and fire commission. We are one of 7 or 8 in the state that have optional powers. However, no matter if they have optional powers or not, they would still have to go through this same process. This is a process that is there specifically for police officers and firefighters. So they would have to go through this exact same. When you are, when you're looking to be relieved of duty for cause, it has to go through, or of disciplinary effect, then it has to go through this process.
Well, people understand that, but it took a long time. That's in part because there were criminal charges, and even in the meeting the other morning, some alderman made the point that let's see how that comes out first before we make any judgments on this. And to me, that's when you have a police force, a chief, and his police force votes a no confidence vote, unanimous. You can't get anybody to get unanimous. I mean, that you can't. The goose was cooked there. You, as a city, couldn't put him back in my estimation, with any kind of authority, and expect the rest of the people who already voted no confidence in him to be a part of that, to his subordinates, so to speak. So I don't know what we're waiting for in the trial.
Well, because you have to go through the due process part of the hearing that was going to begin next week. You have to. You can't, because the police and fire commissioners become the jury. So just to take you back, when the chief went off on the second leave on August 6th, then there was an investigation done. So he was on leave. That until that investigation is complete, and you know what all is taking place, you really can't do anything but go by the waiting period of the investigation. Once the investigation was complete and Steve brought it to the council, then the council agreed unanimously to send a complaint to have him removed. And Steve Barg did that. We had a special meeting, I don't know, the 28th or I'm not exactly sure the date. It was very late September. I want to say the 28th or 29th, but don't quote me on it. It's around there. And then immediately the following day, then Steve Barg served the complaint to the Police and Fire Commission. Well, now that they have the complaint, now their process of 6213 actually starts. So they have, they received the complaint, and I believed on the 30th, and then they had a meeting on, I believe it was the January 14th. Not exactly sure the date, but it was right around there. And then once they made the decision that they're going to go forth, then they have to serve they have to serve the chief, which they did, and then you have to schedule a hearing within 10 to 30 days of that time. So then you have they had a status conference where all attorneys are there and the commissioners were there. They were talking about how it's going to go, setting dates and things like that. That was done in the accurate time frames. And then at that point, when they're setting dates, now you've got to look at. They were thinking there was going to be 40 hours of testimony from witnesses. Well, now you've got the 5 commissioners with schedules. You've got both attorneys with other schedules going on and other things going on. So now you have to set the dates, which they did. I believe it was going to start on the 10th, and they had dates scheduled. I think that they would have one day and then miss 2 days, and then they'd go for a full day another day, and then once that's all done, they had it scheduled for 40 hours or 5 days worth. Could that have gone longer? It might have. It could have been a little shorter. We don't know, but that was where they were going. And then at that time after that, then the commissioners would then go into closed session then after all witnesses have been presented for both sides, and they would deliberate, and then they would make their decision.
Talking with Mayor Bob McManus here on this first Friday in the month of March about the situation with now former Police Chief Rick Gramza. I want to clear something up here with this talk and the vocabulary that you're using, because people in the citizenry are hearing trial, testimony, lawyers. None of this has anything to do with the criminal charges that are happening
Nothing at all.
in court.
No,
These are all things that happen just within the city's parameters
Correct.
of hiring.
Correct. And, don't call it a trial, call it a hearing. Because it's
still a legal term.
Well, it is, but, for those of us that are not, there are so many terms that have been thrown out over the last 8 months with what is and what is not. It's been eventful just trying to keep up with it. The stress that city administrator, HR, staff, and certainly the men and women at the police department has been incredible. So that was the process that had this not taken place and there wasn't a resignation, then the prep would be taking place to go on next week.
So what was the council voting on then? Was the fire commission and police and fire commission had made a recommendation? Or are we at that point?
No, the police and fire commission were
because it's up to them. They don't recommend back, right? I mean, did they make the decision?
They make the decision if it's going to be to suspend or don't suspend, just bring back with full benefits, or terminate. They make that decision. But as far as a resignation, the employee makes that determination.
But I still don't understand why the council was involved in a vote of what in the morning vote?
Of what a potential acceptance of a resignation would mean. Because there it's under, that would be something that the council would be accountable to and would be in their, would be within their responsibility because they're accepting a resignation. And that's a completely different thing than somebody that's going to go through the process. And if he would have had to go through the process with the police and fire commission of going through that entire process with all the testimony and then deliberating, and then the commission would do that, that would be however they would see it. Two different things.
That's what's confusing for the citizenry.
Absolutely. This whole thing has been extraordinarily confusing, and it's been difficult for everybody because there's so many different aspects here that are there. It's been a long process, but realistically looking at it from, once the city got the complaint, it went to investigation real quick. And then the investigation takes time because there are lots of different angles and issues and whatnot. So when they got done with their investigation, it was thorough. It was very thorough. But our investigation for the city part, and this is the hard part, is completely separate and not involved with what is taking place on criminal complaints or anything like that. It's completely separate. We had 2 investigations going on at the same time. The one here with the PFC is an employment issue.
That's something that the citizens need to know, too. Mm-hmm. And all of these people have a salary. There's money involved in investigations, in lawyers, and coming down now to Chief Graham's resignation and the acceptance of that, what would you call it, plea bargain was made, and he accepted that he would do that in lieu of a lot more lawyer expense. And now we get to the part that galls the people. Why is he still getting a severance, or so to speak, where he's getting paid, basically the news report was $70-some thousand yet, plus his benefits over a period of time. Why?
And that was by a vote of 8-2.
That's what they were voting on.
Yes. And that was by a vote of 8-2. And there are some people that looked at it from, and I can't speak for the aldermen. I know that there were, it was a hard discussion because from a, from a point of view of what do you want to do, there's one way you would want to see justice done. Then there's the other aspect of the cost behind it. When you start looking at those, they start crossing. Those are decisions that the council had to make. And so there were 2 that, even some of the ones that said yes, if you watch the vote, the council members were struggling. I mean, I look back and I saw Ed Wagner was beside himself. And although he voted one way, you could see that he was conflicted with that. But at the end of the day, the vote is 8-2. 2 folks just did not want to go along with it for reasons that they stated. And that is Ken Bargender and Quentin Rosendich. They were the no votes, and everyone else was the yes vote. And I will tell you that the gravity of what was taking place was evident on every single one of the council members. They are, this has been extraordinarily difficult for them because of all of the unique scenarios that are taking place, and how close this was, how painful this was very evident as they were making their votes. Those are tough votes to make. They were very tough discussions, and there a lot that went into it.
Well, my part in this is to try to unpack it for those of us who weren't there and understand how we got here. We understand the charges. We understand we've been hearing about it for months and months. We understand there's an investigation. Now we understand there's 2 investigations, one on behalf of criminal charges, one on behalf of the city. We now know that what is alleged, and we, from the criminal portion of it, as the trial winds down and bargains and things are dropped and charges are amended or whatever the case may be, which again has nothing to do with the city's portion of this. It was purely an employment standpoint. But the amount of, for lack of a better term, rigmarole that had to go into that confused the citizens. And in the meantime, they're still laying out what I'm hearing from a lot of people is we're still paying for this situation as it goes on, as if it weren't going on, with wages and benefits that are still going on. You still, in the point of the counselor, or the councilman, was let's understand what this person did and is officially convicted of before we terminate employment. But for most of us,
well, but that's, you've got to be very, very clear there, because it is not uncommon, as you've seen certainly in the public, that before a trial come up, there's resignations and things like that. Because if you go all the way to the point of going through the trial, then there really is no benefit, hypothetically, to a resignation at that point, because all the information has all been gone through. So a resignation after all of that trial is out, you probably wouldn't see. Another thing to consider is if in a scenario like this, what has been discussed, let's just look at the scenarios. Assuming that we're not in the scenario that we're in, and assuming that the hearing was going to be taking place as planned, starting, I believe, on the 10th, and you go through 5 days of deliberations at 40 or 50 hours, and now you start calculating the attorney's fees, and then you get all the way down to the very end, and then the commissioners, who are now acting as jurors because they've not seen all of the information, because they're in essence acting as the juror. Now they see the hearing, they have all the information, maybe they have questions that they could ask, and then when they deliberate, they can come back with one of a couple of different scenarios. One is to say, we're bringing a person back and no disciplinary action or whatever, in which case then that person would be reinstituted and there's been no lost pay, so you go ahead from there. Another thing that they could do is they could suspend for however long they want. And then another aspect that they have would be termination. Well, in a scenario like this, what somebody could do that was, let's just say that their scenario is termination. Now, again, this is all hypothetical. Then what they could do at that time, if they feel that maybe there was something procedurally wrong or something along those lines, then they could, at that time, they can appeal the decision. Now, the appeal does not go back to the commission. The appeal then goes to the circuit court. And during the appeal, whoever the person is that filed the appeal is still getting paid. You might not be in front of another court for another 6, 7, 8 months. So you've got to continue to pay there. Then you've got to go through that 40 hours of testimony. Now you've got to go through all of that again. And you're looking at, this could go on for quite some time.
So to boil this down for you viewing and listening, the $70,000 of salary and benefits is probably going to be less than what it would have costed to take this thing all the way out to trial. And all that testimony that you just told me all about here, and how many more months down the road we would go. And that's the part that people need to understand. This may have been fiscally the best way out, and I can't deny that that was on some people's mind.
You're right in the analogy and of the hypothetical situation that I gave you. You're 100% right. And then but understand this. It's being a council member. Let's just focus in on just what you just went through. On some people would be thinking this, and some people would be thinking this. The council members at that point are the equivalent of a referee in a football game. Because there are going to be some people that might be on the side of, that maybe that's not such a bad decision. There's going to be another, on the other side, though, there is a thing of wanting to see what people would think would be justice and wanting to see that gone through. And, they're not going to be as happy. I will tell you this. Nobody's thrilled about this. I mean, what we're able to do now, though, is we're able to move ahead and put this behind us, and we're going to have to mend, and we will. I will say this, all the way through this entire process, our police department has done incredible. The morale right now is good. They're working very, very hard. They're keeping us safe. I'm sure you've seen a fair amount of drug busts that have taken place, and they're doing well, even through all of this. And so now what we need to really, as we move ahead here, is focus on the repair and getting things done and getting things done right.
Well, we'll get to that, but we're not done talking about this yet.
That's fine.
That is, fiscally, it might have been better to use the settlement and take the resignation Chief Gramza had offered, or whatever the negotiation was, and said that was better. Then also, there's another component that you mentioned, a roundabout way, is that the unseemly testimony that would have put the city in an even bigger black eye. Some people like that kind of thing in this world, They want to go through all the three falls, and find out who's going to get jabbed and what the hell was going on down there. But for the most part, everybody involved is a little, and including the council people, that this doesn't have to happen that way. So part of the vote to settle the way we have became not only fiscal, but also I don't want to say moral, a component to this, whereby people don't, we don't need to hear all of that. I think we got it. Those of the people, including the council, who saw in closed session what went on, they already know. They don't need any more testimony. They've got it. So let's not let that all go and keep that in closed session and keep our citizens, So I'm saying that they're protecting our integrity a little bit, if you will, or maybe that's not the right word, our balance here, our optics, as how other people view the city without all that testimony, and said, okay, let's go with this. It's wrap this up as quickly as we can with a resignation. We'll pay you the money, just go away. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, that's it's a. I can understand how you could see that, but it is at the height of an oversimplification, and I wish, and this is where, seeing what the council members have been through over the last several months, with this, it's been grueling.
It may be
back and forth, what to do. And so to find out the real aspect, you're really going to have to talk to them. Because in an 8-2 vote, that's pretty decisive. Very decisive.
Well,
so
the arduousness of what the city has been through on behalf of staff and council is not what the people on the bar stool are talking about. They're worried about, why are we still paying this guy? How did we get here? And why are we doing it this way? And these are the procedures that I'm trying to explain here as we're on media.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're doing a very good job of that. But I will tell you that there are people that are, this is not the first time that I've explained 6213 and how it works. Even when people get the explanation on one aspect, they totally understand it. And then they go, okay, now I get it, why it's done this. But they still hate it. So you can have an understanding of something and still not like it. And that you can't That's why in this scenario, if people have a certain opinion, I would never say anybody is wrong. Everyone is entitled to the way they view this. But this is one of those scenarios where you can have a complete understanding of something and still hate it. This is that scenario.
Yeah, there's no winners in this.
No.
That's for sure. There's not a winner and loser most often in the court. Or even in this case, it's not a court. It's just a human resources issue.
Correct.
That's all.
And that's
we're really
why the terms,
about.
as you brought up, when people hear investigation, okay, so what is this? So you had one going down on a criminal side, and then you have the other one that the city has to do when there's city employees involved. And so sometimes when you hear investigations, you cross over, well, which one's which, and what is the difference? And it doesn't make any sense. But realistically, it does, because they're going down. There, you mentioned freeway earlier. They're going down a freeway, but they're not. They're not necessarily related.
Well, the information doesn't change. It's just what you do with it.
Right.
Or what it's used for.
Right.
So we're talking about the situation with now former police chief Rick Ramsey here with the Mayor Bob McManus on today's Insight program, this first Friday of the month, trying to unpack for those of you watching and listening how we got here, because everybody wants to simplify it, and
right.
Understandably so. Because, okay, what's this going to cost me? How long we got to go through this? Who's the schmo here? The basics of what's going on. And so they want to have, everybody wants bumper sticker answers to complicated questions, I always say, in the world today. Whether it's federal politics or and it's not always, or seldom, if ever, just that simple, because there's policies and procedures that most of us don't understand that have to go on. What we do understand, though, is what came out of it, the results. And as you just mentioned, we don't like it.
Right, and there is... we certainly recognize that there's disappointment from some folks in the city. We certainly do. There's a lot of disappointment on a lot of things with this, and and that's part of when you make these types of decisions. They're not easy. They're not easy, and you have to remember for the aldermen, when they're not making this was not a snap decision. We've been dealing with this since
that's why
August. And if you look at most of not all, but a good percentage of the council meetings that we had, at the end of them, we would go into closed session, and many times it was the topic to go over the discussion regarding this. And those were sometimes 2-hour long discussions. So now when you get down all the way here, and you've got, on behalf of the council members, they've got hours, dozens of hours of going over this, and all of that information is what filters into an ultimate decision. And I know that I saw, if you would have been in the room, you would have just, what's interesting is when you see it on TV, channel 991, or we do Facebook Live, or we have a great communications department, and all this stuff is on. When you see it on TV or on Facebook, what you don't see is you don't have the feeling of what's going on in there. And there are different, sometimes you walk into a council chambers and it's pretty thick, and others everybody's happy. And when I'm, I will watch a lot of our finance, budget, and personnel, public works, and other ones that we televise, so I can, when we go to vote on things in the consent agenda, I want to make sure I'm up to date on exactly what's taking place in case there would be any information. And there is a different dynamic when you're watching it as you're opposed to when you're there. And I will tell you that there were aldermen that were just struggling with their vote. And some were very clear on their vote. But at the end of the day, the vote was 8-2. And you have to go with that.
Understandably so. Talking with Mayor Bob McManus here on this first Friday in the month of March. You can too. 384-2191, 384-2192 on the Insight program. I'm Jeff Cannon, back with more in a moment.
I just fired up the grill outside and I'm going to cook some hamburgers and steaks. I'm holding a piece of charcoal. It's no longer hot. You can see the flames are bright red and the charcoal is getting hot. Well, why am I telling you this? Well, recently there was a garbage truck fire because of improper disposal of ashes. And the fire department wanted me to bring this information to you to be safe when you dispose of ashes such as these. The investigation showed when the ashes were dumped, there was still an ember in the trash. If it wasn't for fast action of the drivers of the garbage truck, things could have been much worse. Well, as you can see, I'm grilling out here, and I have some ashes that I originally put in this metal container for safekeeping. I put this in here for about a week. As you can see, they are no longer hot. I'm also going to shut the container so no oxygen can actually get into the container. So, it's important to use a metal container, not a plastic container. And then after about a week, you can dump those into the trash.
AM 1450 WDLB's Insight program here for the first Friday in the month of March. You know that if you're listening, you may be watching us here on Channel 989 on your Charter, Charter Spectrum digital tier again. You can watch the government channels, 989, 990, 991, and as we were talking about with the mayor here, that those are things you can watch. Pretty much, I think a lot of them are streaming or on, at the time, live on cable TV. So you can see what's going on as it's going on. You have your little foam brick like you have for the Packer game. You can throw it at if you want to take a chance at being an alderman.
Right. Right.
We're going to sell those for a fundraiser. We used to have potholes for sale. Now we're going to have foam bricks.
Right. That's
little
right.
Nerf balls for people that are going up. Because we were talking about the situation that, would you say it's resolved? I mean, as far as the city's aspect of this is concerned with former police chief Rick Gramza?
I would. I mean, I guess that's the way I would view it with the resignation that's there. And
settlement has been
well, I mean, that was all
and
part of the agreement. So as far as I know, at this point, the resignation is there. We did receive his letter, and my understanding is his attorney made a statement, and now they can, do two different things. My main concern is all of the employees of the city of Marshfield, and to know that, first of all, to the people that came forward with complaints, that is an incredible amount of bravery to do that. And I will tell you, it's the bravery to go through something like that through 8 months of this investigation, I think is really incredible. And I'm at a loss of words for this, because it's rather emotional to see. Now that we're here and the resolution is there, now you can actually maybe start feeling some things. So I want the city employees to know that they did the right thing. They came forward, and they should have no fear. They should have zero fear of any form of retaliation or anything like that. And the citizens of Marshfield have been through an enormous amount with this because of for obvious reasons, the limited information that's out. When you're dealing with employee issues, you can't just say a lot. As an employer, you just can't. And so, at the end of the day, taxpayer is the one footing the bill. So then there's an argument of, okay, well, I could pay the bill, but I can't know what's going on, and that is, it's an understandable argument, but when you look into employee privacies and things like that, you've got to be very careful.
So the saga of former police chief Rick Gramza goes on in the courts, but it's done as far as the city is concerned. All right, where are we now? What are we going to do now? Is the same police and fire commission in charge of finding a new chief? Are we going to promote from within? What's the situation?
Well, that's a good question. I believe those are questions for the police and fire commission, and there will be conversations certainly with the city administrator, city attorney, and I'm sure the council on the where do we go now. Right now, we just got. This all just happened.
How would you suggest a citizen get their opinions to those commissioners? If there's something I want to say to them, how do I get to? Is there open comment in their meetings?
I don't believe that they have open comment in theirs. So one thing people could do is they can always at the council meetings. Always there's citizen comments in the very beginning. So you can certainly do that. You can also write a letter to the commissioners, send it to Deb Hall, I guess, the city clerk, and she would get that to them. Those are the easiest ways I could think of. So certainly if you have a letter that you'd want to do, then you could certainly do that. You are in circulation and you have a phone number and you get messages, and most often you feel an obligation to respond. Do they? I don't know what they do. My phone numbers are all public. I've got it in the phone book. I've not blocked that. Now this is my belief, so I'm not speaking for council members or anything. As a public servant, you need to be accessible. So I do get. Every now and then I'll get a call at home or, it's rare. It normally comes through on my city phone, but you've got to be accessible. People could send me emails. You could certainly call Deb Hall, the city clerk, and see if she has their numbers if you wanted to make phone contact with them, or send an email to Deb Hall to their attention. That would get there as well.
And you can find that on the city's website.
Absolutely.
There's contact us pages, and there's numbers on there. That's a good resource.
That's a great
where do
resource.
You start? That's where you start, and you start weeding out who you might want to talk to and see who you can get to some of the commissioners and let them know what you think.
If you go to our city website and you go to commissions, boards, and committees, you'll see all of the different boards, committees, and commissions that are there, and who's on them. I believe, and they typically have they have different terms. Some are 2-year, 3-year, 5-year, and so all of that information is readily available on the City of Marshfield website.
So we don't know whether we're going to try to pull someone in from outside or promote from within or whatever, but you can make and I'm talking to the people listening and viewing here, make your thoughts known to them on how you think this is going to unfold or should unfold in the future, and why. I guess as a taxpayer you have the right to do that. Whether they take that advice, depending upon, again, there's so many procedures. You look at the whole process and people go, why are you doing that? Why'd you do it that way? Why didn't you just, and when you explain it to them, they don't want to sit down and listen to the whole explanation because it's long and convoluted. Nothing is ever that simple, especially in trials and testimonies and things like that. But there's due process that everyone gets, for the most part. Some people claim they're not, but that's a different time and place for a discussion. But going on from here on how we do this is going to be the point of contention, I would think, as to whether or not we bring in a chief from the outside, whether or not the people from inside can be trusted. You've gone out of your way to make a point that the people that are in the department at this point in time that you've had discussions with and you've measured in your own mind their integrity, you're 100% behind them.
There's no doubt. I mean, I'm with what the... I've never been a police officer. I've been a paramedic. And I know that there are some times when you get to calls and a call that looks very simple, you think it's going to be real easy, and then it just blows up in your face, and you've got to make snap decisions. Now, that's as a paramedic. I mean, and this was quite a while ago. So that's one thing. So I do understand part of it, but when you look at the stress that our police officers are under, when they pull somebody over for a left turn signal or a brake lights out or, you know what, something, and then it turns into something really bad, that's the threat that they go through every single day on every stop and every call. And it takes a special person to do that, especially with the scrutiny that police officers have had over the last several years. You know, that with what the national media has done and all of the different things, what they have been through is just horrible. And I respect each and every one of them behind that badge. They do a lot, and I know I'm speaking for a lot of people within the city that they do too. And I think now is the time. You know, we always need the police. We always need the fire department, because you never know when you're going to be the one that needs to be helped by the ambulance or by a police officer. We always need them. And now I think during this healing process, I'm hope we're there for them. They're always there for us. I think it's important that we as a community are going to be there for them and support them while they continue to do the incredible job that they have done through this whole thing. I mean, you can imagine the disruption in a department of when a department head is going through this. That's major disruption. Well, I'll tell you what, on the street, you would never know it was happening with the high caliber of work that they do, the high caliber of effort that they put in on it. I mean, I'm very proud of the city of Marshfield. I'm very proud of the city of Marshfield employees, all of them in all the departments, because this has taken a toll on all departments. Just being a city employee is a little rough, and they are valued. We do really value them. And so I think that's why now, as you bring up, well, what are we going to do here? What are we going to do there? The dust is settling. Those conversations are going to be made, are going to be had. But we just have not, at least that I'm aware of. Now, maybe it's different with the Police and Fire Commission. You would have to discuss that with them.
Talking with Mayor Bob McManus here this past hour, trying to unpack for you that are viewing and listening here to our program about what happened and the resignation now as far as the city's point of concern is with former Police Chief Rick Gramza. You can ask here if I didn't get to it, 384-2191 or 384-2192. You just alluded to the fact that there's a lot of angst and things that go on within the city, and I can't leave without you getting caught up in part of this too here. We'll ask you where your situation stands here in just a moment.
I just fired up the grill outside, and I'm going to cook some hamburgers and steaks. I'm holding a piece of charcoal. It's no longer hot. You can see the flames are bright red, and the charcoal is getting hot. Well, why am I telling you this? Well, recently there was a garbage truck fire because of improper disposal of ashes. And the fire department wanted me to bring this information to you to be safe when you dispose of ashes such as these. The investigation showed when the ashes were dumped, there was still an ember in the trash. If it wasn't for fast action of the drivers of the garbage truck, things could have been much worse. Well, as you can see, I'm grilling out here, and I have some ashes that I originally put in this metal container for safekeeping. I put this in here for about a week. As you can see, they are no longer hot. I'm also going to shut the container so no oxygen can actually get into the container. So, it's important to use a metal container, not a plastic container. And then after about a week, you can dump those into the trash.
WDLB's Inside program for the first Friday in the month of March. That means Mayor Bob McManus avails himself to our questions here on the Inside program. And when we talked about here this past hour, the situation with former Police Chief Rick Gramza, also coming out of this is an investigation of you that's still going on at this point in time. Where do we stand now?
Well, there's no investigation going on.
That was done?
The investigation was closed back in December 8th. And the investigation, I guess back in Portage County Sheriff did the investigation after they received a complaint was made on August 6th. And then it got around to it, not something where, our local city is going to do it for potential conflict of interest. So it went to Portage County, and they did a thorough investigation. They reported their findings to the Wood County DA on December 8th. We got notification. I had an attorney that I was dealing with. He got notification from the Wood County DA that there was no charges filed. So, in essence, that was closed. So no charges are filed. No criminal, no misdemeanor, not even a fine or a ticket. And so then that was all closed, and then from there were members of the Police and Fire Commission just had a special meeting, I don't know, maybe 3 to 4 weeks ago, and to review the investigation that was done, and in that. Even though there's no charges filed, so there's no criminal activity or anything like that, they apparently think that it is worth the removal of the office of mayor, or the person in the office of mayor. So Randy Gershman is one of the commissioners that started the open records request back in April 24th and made the complaint on August 6th or 7th, whenever it was. And then, and he did that. He is a commissioner, but he's also a resident citizen. And then after they had their meeting, they did not, because they can't take action as a commission. But then a different commission member was Andy Keogh, is the one who filed the complaint to have me removed.
And when will that happen?
That is going to take place on the first. Well, they're scheduling 2 nights. The first one is on Friday, March 19th at 6 p.m.
And that's when, testimony more of this is going to come out? Facts?
Yep,
fact-finding mission again?
Well, I mean, the information is all there.
I guess.
The information, now they'll bring witnesses to go, and then I will have the ability to cross-examine them and show why I think that this is really coming out. And then the council is the jury, so they're going to have to make a decision.
Okay, well, I might talk to you again next month.
I hope so.
That's as good as I can do here for you.
That's right.
Here on AM 1450 WDLB's Insight, talking with Mayor Bob McManus this first Friday of the month. And all the interesting topics. Gee, I remember when there wasn't anything to talk about. I used to complain about that coming in. Now I can't get to it all.
Nice to get back. days.
Here on AM 1450 WDLB, I'm Jeff Cannon with you.